𝙻𝙾𝙾𝙺 said, I would love to see a highly detailed look description depending on where you're standing, but that may be wishful thinking. If you're standing outside of Noobyard, you're standing outside the outskirts of Night Harbor, outside of Western Gate. To the east are the walls of the city. To the west, ventures further out into Shaded Dune. I wonder how that would... See, if a newbie knew to hit look, that would definitely help some of the folks that get confused. I don't know that that's bad. Like, I don't know that... I'm trying to think, like, is that too many specifics? So, 𝙻𝙾𝙾, that's where my brain went, but I don't know that that's the case. I don't know that that is a bad thing at all. You know what? I always say I'll have that in mind, and then other shit pops up and I forget it. That's why I like to write notes during stream. Here. All right. Immortalized. I don't think it's too much info when you think about mud games. You can go east or west kind of verbiage. Yeah, you know what? I think you just put the finger on. My brain was going, yeah, but that sounds so familiar. And I think that's exactly it. I think that's a nice homage. Oh my gosh. Do you know how many NPCs are in this zone? This was meant to be a small zone. This was just meant to be a little quickie zone. Even our little, hey, let's make a 2-room zone turn into like half a dungeon. But yeah, so anyways, I think we're up. It's like over 800 NPCs in here now. Just think when this is one region. Just think when all the biomes and all the regions and the full map is fleshed out. In theory, you could roll up a new race class combo, log in and play again, and probably see a ton of shit that you never saw the first time through, or the second time through, or the third time through. But I think that's the business model, right? Like, that's the idea. Now we've got a stable and stuff in here. I was like, I need to add some more NPCs. And then I looked and was like, looking for the next sort of available NPC ID slots in this zone. It's like, really? Over 800? Okay. Is this a town area? This is a little way station, right? So if you go this way, you're going into Vale of Zentar, right? And you're heading north toward Keeper's Bite and then into Evershade Weald, the Wood Elf area. Here, you go this way and you're going towards Shaded Dunes and then Night Harbor. So it's a little way station here. You can stop over. We'll be curious to see how players wind up using this. Some of the way we've got stuff set up. So we've got a stable here. We got ourselves a shady vendor over here. Yeah, so we'll play around with it and see how much this maybe can turn into a little bit of a social area, depending on your faction, of course, for stuff that's going on in here. We'll see how it gets utilized. So it's not a town. It's just a couple of buildings, a little stopover. Death Rider says, one thing I realized that has been lost in MMOs and Pantheon, the mobs all have their little areas and barely move. In EQ, they path all over the place. You can follow a mob on their trail for 10 or 15 minutes. I hope to see more of that in M&M. Makes the world feel more alive. This zone already has some of that, believe it or not. There's a guy who pathed from all the way over here. And guys, it is longer than it looks. All the way down through in there to check on some people that are working for him and back. He was the one that was terrifying us in the last Wednesday's playtest. Any thoughts on where the new tunnel for trading will be? No clue. No clue. I think that is something that you guys are going to figure out before we do. We'll encourage it in different areas, but I think something like that is going to wind up being fairly organic. We'll encourage it with certain things, likely, because you'll want to be near banks and this and that. But I mean, EC wasn't near a bank, so... I'm hoping stuff like player-owned shops and things like that make it so that maybe, you know, and some of our other decisions make it so that our towns, our cities feel a little more lived in. Because I think of an area like, you know, North Freeport, and I'm like, man, why isn't this just humming with social activity? Let me look in the database and kind of see, because anytime I just create new, sometimes it creates it with maybe like a number I don't want it to have, an idea I don't want it to have or whatever. So I like to have a little bit more control over that. So let me go to zone mode action. So basically the stuff that you'll see in here when I'm messing with this, and then over here it'll be in the inspector as well, is everything that we do. The vast majority of what we mess with is going back into our database. Right, like just our relational DB structure. And it's a real simple system. Most of what we do, even if it looks complex, is relatively simple. Early on in the setup, we were going for simplicity, just huge scalability, right? Because we're already at a point where if I look here, 5,800 items, if I go into NPCs, 4,300 NPCs, if I had to think about like zone spawns, show all, almost 6,500 zone spawns, zone spawn commands, show all, 11,000. The whole idea was we want something, I've worked with a number of systems over the years, a number of setups, and honestly, in thinking back, it was like the oldest, clunkiest, well, not clunkiest to be honest, the oldest, simplest setup that I've worked in was probably my favorite. And it was just because, you know, if you know SQL, or if you can ask Chat GPT about SQL, like I have to do every once in a while, you can do a ton of stuff. Like Nick's able to come in here and just run a query and get a ton of shit done. It's, for me, I just grew up, my earliest days of being a game designer was just, you know, in the land of, hey, I have an NPC here and I want to make a new NPC, so I'm going to be like making a new rat man. All right, so we've got a Screevar. What level do I want him to be? It doesn't matter. I'll just find one that's in the ballpark, and then I'll go, all right, right click, duplicate row with keys. I'll go and make the adjustments that I need to them. Click off, boom, I've got a rat man, right? Like what we've done then is we've integrated some visualization to go along with that as needed, right? And we've done a little, we've played with some tools in the past. Keith's done some stuff for us. I think we may wind up doing some more, you know, whether it be web-based or whatever, tooling in the future to make it easier to kind of look at NPCs at a glance or whatever, you know, kind of a continuation on those early things that Keith had done in game. For the most part, we're able to just work in the table, even if it is a little, you know, clunky. It's easy enough if you know what you're messing with to come in here and just be like, I want to mess with these values. So you uncheck that, you click the ones you want, blah, 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 right? So again, simplicity, speed, and then most of our systems are interconnected in a way where the stuff that we can do with volumes are things that we can also do with NPC quests, are things that we can do with switches, right? And so if we're able to trigger certain types of events, or we're able to perform certain actions within them, like it's fairly universal now. So the way that MUD actions work are they're their own volume, but then they can be linked to other volumes, and they've got the bulk of the capability that, you know, if we can have some sort of event occur, like be triggered based on like an NPC quest, then I'm fairly certain we'll also be able to do it with our MUD action. And over time, what we did was we layered in more and more in the MUD actions, so that MUD actions, not only much like all our other volumes and systems, can be aware of like conditionals, they can be aware of, you know, essentially the state of the world, what weather event is going on, or what lunar cycle are we in, or what day is it, or what time is it, or what season is it, all that other shit. But they can also look and find things like, and there's a test case of this in Night Harbor, where you go in and you do a look and it'll give you one description. And if you go in and do a look and you have CMViz on, it'll give you a different description, right? Because the MUD actions can also look and see what items you have in your possession, what items you're holding, what buffs you have on, things like that, right? But it's like, it's a really dead simple setup. You know, it sounds fancy, but it's not even something that's scripted. It's just strictly, you know, it's just checking these conditions. Trophy Bard, 5,805 items. Are those all unique? Yeah, right. So that was one of the things we talked about immediately. Was I've worked on MMO teams where they didn't really think about the fact that at some point they were going to have tens and tens of thousands of records to deal with. And, you know, I've worked on teams where you're in an MMO and it's like the data is kind of nested in this weird directory structure that's then associated with, like, you know, prefabs or objects in game. It's just all sorts of weird shit that's just, it's hard to find stuff. And like, I love that everything's just in tables here, and it's so easy to just boom, find it. Our MUD actions are essentially set up where, you know, it's got a zone that it's associated with, got an ID, it's got a type for each one of our MUD action types. So is it a look, inspect? Is it, you know, is it a rub? Is it a pool? It's got, is it a sphere, right? They're typically happening within a volume. So is it a sphere or is it a box volume? What's its position? What's its scale? Rotation, of course. What is the prompt? And the prompt is where we are able to, like in this case, define that you have to have this item in order for it to execute. So a prompt is like on inspect. It's probably going to be, what are you looking? It may be this phrase, inscription. So like inspect inscription. It could be multiple phrases, right? So any one of these words will trigger it. And then it's going to trigger a T-mote, not an emote. Emote, everybody would hear. T-mote, only you, the person triggering it, will hear. And it looks like we've got some placeholders going in here already. Oh, yeah. Actually, I think I put those in a while back. I need to go back and finish those. And it can, because it can do skill checks, so it can look to see, do you have certain skills? because it may only be visible to you if you have, like, for example, a high survivalist skill, or if you've got a high perception skill, or, you know, we defined a skill requirement like the number in there. Condition, is it day, is it night, is it raining? And then just a little comment field for us to be able to keep track of them, right? So pretty simple. We can link it to other stuff from there, and it winds up, you know, being pretty powerful. You don't need big complex systems to make cool shit. We don't need big complex systems to make cool shit. Just with the simple systems that we have, the biggest challenge is not what can the system do. It's defining, like, basically applying the focus to making stuff. We've already got enough functionality that we can do a ton of cool shit. Right? So now it's a matter of, like, getting it in. And I think that happens a lot in game development. We get these big, like, crazy ideas in our head about these elaborate systems. And even while doing so, because it takes a while, get them in, then we're dreaming about all the cool stuff we're going to do. Then we get it in, and then it's like, oh man, we don't really even have enough time to do all this cool stuff, right? So for us, it was, how do we get our tools up and running fast and then just start making stuff? And a lot of times, the simple stuff has just as big an effect as something that would have been 10 times more elaborate. All right, so I just hit create new. The sphere, let's make it a box. All right, so again, as you can tell, setting up a mud action, not super complex. Actually, probably doesn't need a prompt because it's a look. It just needs a T-mote. Bill said, or asked, Junior Unity developer question. How did you get Unity to run while you're editing the zone? I either edit or use game mode, which puts me in the view of the player. I am in game mode, but I've also got a scene tab open. You can add a tab here. If you don't have a scene tab up there already, Bill, then add a scene tab, and then you can switch between them. And so then you're kind of in edit mode, right? While the game's running, which is always fun. And then with us, since almost everything is in data, emotes, the dusty stable appears to be well kept despite the treacherous, I think that's spelled correctly, condition surrounding it. All right, maybe not the best stuff. Eric can make that better, right? And then what I'll do is I'll just close that out. That's our little close it out mark. I'll hit save again, right? So that should have updated the database. Let's refresh. Let's look for Fallen. This is volume 13. All right, there it is. It's in there now. Have I ever accidentally broken the database? Be honest. Yeah, I overwrote the entire database. A few years back. It was hilarious. I ran a script that was meant to update my local database with the database's info, and it updated the database with its, like, an older version of its own info or some shit. It was ridiculous. I never work locally anymore. And yeah. I was like, Ollie, I think I just overwrote the entire database with some nonsense. Then he laughed and he was like, oh, I've got a backup. So, and that was like year one. And then we had a new guy on the team who did the exact same thing like a couple days later, and he was horrified because I do it. I'm like, oh, whatever. Like, shit. I just ruined the game. Sorry. No big deal. But this poor guy had been on the team for a couple days and did the same thing. He was just like, you could hear the sweat dripping off him as he typed it. And he sent me a direct message. I like laughed. I was like, dude, don't sweat it. I just did the same thing. You know what? Let's fix it so that none of us can ever do that again. And so we did. So anyways, I just added this mud action. Let's see if it works. It may work. What I'll do is I'll reload the zone. That should fix our stable hand there. And EverQuest was also a live database. And I will say that taught me to try to be pretty careful because that was stressful. As a brand new designer, that was real stressful. It's like, all right, so now the stable master. His name's not good, but hey, we can fix that later. Zukin said, if you haven't broken the game once, are you even making a game? Probably not. Need to do more. Bill, when you're in here, if you want to go to full screen on this, right, as we're sort of switching between these, something that John Gamble taught me early on, double click on the tab. It's a little bit slower going back, unfortunately. Here. The reload zone, stable master's there. It jacks my UI up a little bit when I do this, but that's, you know, that's sort of the whole thing with toggling between views like that. I hit look, and boom, mud action. The dusty stable appears to be well kept despite the treacherous conditions surrounding it. Now, what we can do is, and let's see if we can do it, and we'll see if we can be a little bit quicker this time. Dargit says, worked with an engineering manager that would have new hires submit broken check-ins on like day 2 to 3 with us and spend a day fixing it. Thought being that they were going to do it sooner or later, might as well learn the recovery process we had ASAP. That's actually a really smart move. We actually have old saves of the entire game, right? So it's feasible to go back and play year 1 M&M back when it was Project N. So it's data and everything. Old clients, old data. So we can come in here, and then one of the fun things we can do with mud actions. So I'm going to turn off all these little lines and spawn goblins and stuff like that. So just it's a little less to look at here. Cool. Because I just want to look at this volume. And we'll say, we'll call this waypoint stable look. It could probably have a better name, right? And then what we'll do is prompt, we'll say, actually, we'll make this well, yeah, this will be it'll just be another look. In this case, it'll be a T-mote, emote. You notice something sitting under the cart, but can't. You got to be careful the way you word these. I think that's still fine though. You know, we're doing it on the fly. We're doing it live. Sitting under the cart, but can't make out what it. Because some of this you've got to kind of work with this a bit too, because it's going to be less than ideal sometimes. But once you kind of get the rhythm of our jank, once you understand the flavor of our jank, then you can work with it. It's like any game, and different designers will provide different jank. And then, you know, we may get feedback and we may adjust it, right? So anyways, we got this going on here, and then we hit save. And then we can either make it a smaller volume. So we could come in here and we could go, all right, so I hit save there. Fallen Pass 14 exists now. I see it. Great. Then we could do another one and just be like, we come over here, create a new one. Boom. And now we've got this guy. He's 15. We're going to comment to him, and that's going to be Waystation Stable Park. And what we can do is take this little dude here, make him much smaller, and maybe it'll even stay a sphere this time. Come here. No, but I like maybe it'll work. I typically like box colliders because they're a little bit easier to work with at times for stuff like this, right? Even though sometimes the sphere is more intuitive action wise. Still, this isn't bad, but you don't want that overlap because you may get a false positive if you're over here doing it, right? So we come here and kind of overlap it where you think you guys are probably going to be. You know what? I don't like it. I just don't like it. I don't like sphere. Box collider it is. We're doing a box within a box within a box. It's mudception. We're mudceptioning, guys. It's boxes all the way down for sure. Isn't that a Sturgill Simpson album? Boxes all the way down. Give it a little bit more leeway. All right, so now, hey, Bite Keeper. So now we've got another box here, and in this one we can give it a different prompt. Or it's going to be a different action. It's actually going to be INP, INS? I forget. It's been a little while since I've been in here making these, to be honest with you. A little rusty. INP. Cool. So it's going to be INP prompt will be... Let me move this out of the way here. Let me get my stuff set up over here. So the prompt will basically be phrase. Did we say cart? We said cart in the last one, right? So it'll just be cart, and the reply will wind up being another T-emote because it's an emote that's going straight to you. Made you look. Because we're just doing a test one real quick, right? So save. So go back to game real quick. We got these guys in. We'll reload zone. We'll see if I forgot to do anything. Probably did. Maybe did. Then we'll fix it real quick. Pretty easy, pretty fast to fix. It takes a minute for reload zones to kick off these days. I'm not sure what that's about. We'll have to, when the guys aren't as busy, we'll have to see if that's something where we can speed that back up again. All right, so let's see if all of our stuff works. Look, Dusty Stable appears to be well kept despite the treacherous conditions surrounding it. All right, so that worked. If I'm here, this place seems interesting. Let's see if it works. Oh, you know what? I got to reverse the numbers on these, I bet. Did that give me a third one? It did. Okay, cool. Cool little reminder. So let's come in here. I think this will fix it. So we got 13, 14, and 15 now. Let me reverse the order and see if that fixes it. Because when we're nesting, when we're nesting volumes within volumes, it's actually not proximity based, I believe. The DB has like the ID has a say. Ideally, it would be more intuitive to the designer. It would just be proximity based, but let's see if this fixes it. So we got 13, 14, 15. Let's make 13. What are y'all working on now? Just playing with mud actions a little bit more. So I'll make this one 16. Make it the highest. I'll make this one. Whoops, that's not going to work because it's not high enough. 17. 16. See if that works now. That should work. We'll see if it works. If it doesn't work, then I'll have to call tech support. Alright, so I'm in here. I look. Dusty Stable. That worked. Let's see if this next one works. It may not work. It may prove me wrong. You notice something sitting under the cart, but can't make out what it is. Okay, it did work, right? So it's just the order. It helps, I guess, prioritize it. The description here is just sort of the general stable description. Look, Dusty Stable appears to be well kept. Yeah. And then here, since I'm close to the cart, and this is, you know, it's interesting stuff here. Maybe there's something to find here. I'll go, maybe there's something here. I'm going to look again. Oh, did it not work this time? Should, right here. Look. I noticed something sitting under the cart, but can't make out what it is. Now, if I come here and use the mud action, inspect cart, then I get the response right here. You guys can't see it because my big ass head's in the way. Now, it's easy enough for me to have it be basically anything. You know, you could get an item, right? It could say you find a shiny coin, right? And like I said before, the only difference between this being one that, like if we look here, grab this guy. The difference between this being around all the time and this being a condition, or one that only happens every once in a while, is like I could put a condition in here so that, you know, only happens at night. Only happens during the day. Only happens when it's raining. Only happens if I have a buff on me. See Invis, detect magic, maybe, right? Shit like that. So then that will leverage our buff system, and then hopefully as we get more different utility buffs and things like that in, you know, it could be just a whole range of combinations of that stuff. And then one of the things that we want to get in sooner rather than later, hopefully, is a respawn delay on the item. So it could be that you look and there's nothing there, but it's because maybe somebody had just picked something up. And then if you come back a little bit later and look again, then there is something there and it gives you the item right away. And then there's kind of again a respawn delay, right? So that's, yeah, I don't know. Hopefully that demonstrated the system a little bit. Again, one of the dangers of showing this stuff off is don't want to, you know, I don't want it to make kind of like a magic trick. If you see exactly how the magic trick's performed, you're like, oh wow, magic's actually sometimes it's kind of simple and lame. But hopefully the end effect is that you really start to get the sense that it's hard to discover everything in our game because you don't know if it's going to be, is it going to be something that's based off of a certain condition? Is it going to be, you know, we've got a newbie quest where you can't see the items that you need to see and you can't interact with the items that you want to interact with if you've got a, unless you've got a certain item with you that helps you see them, right? So it's stuff like that. Plump Helmet says, pretty excited to think about all the secrets we'll be able to hunt down and find. Always something new to discover. Yeah, one of the things too is the fact that we can have these linked into skills and skill requirements, and over time maybe even more stuff. It'll be a nice hook for certain trade skills, what we're calling trade skills, but maybe more. Maybe it's a better description to say like professions or whatever, right? Like, you know, if you're in a dungeon and you've got a high archaeology skill, what could you potentially see? Yeah, so I've been meaning to put an inscription collection quest in the game, and that just means, you know, if you're aware of it from like the fighter quest or just in general, you're running around with some parchment and some charcoal, getting frottages, a word I learned from Hamad, frottages of the various inscriptions, and then bring them back and give them to the right dude, and boom, little quest. Little questy quest. We've got some wild stuff going in. It's going to be nice actually getting that stuff a little more integrated and deployed. If you were here earlier, you saw some of the stuff that was posted. Did anybody not see the mount images that were posted in Discord? I had to look it up, 𝙻𝙾𝙾𝙺. It may actually be frottage, but I think it's frottage. But yeah, the hope is to get a lot of these in so that you know, tons of places have good descriptions. That's one of the things I was talking to Eric about. So when he's not doing editing for us and cleaning up our documentation stuff, he'll be helping out with getting more mud actions in, doing some nice creative writing work. So you'll see more of that. You'll see more of the aggro, death and victory text in. So that gives you some additional flavor as well.